recording over here, and hopefully my bandwidth is fine. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody tonight to the December 2020 meeting of the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee. I'm the 2020 Chair, John Davey, and with us tonight, Vice Chair John Reslier, Vice Chair, here we go. Okay, and Tim is there. I lost you on my list, Tim. Tim White, and Brooke's not in with us tonight, and she might not be in, so we'll just see how it goes. I'm still admitting people as we're getting underway here. So, to begin the evening, doing the driving here while we're doing this. Let's see. Just to let you know what we're all about tonight. The first thing we do is we call the meeting in order, which we're just done. These are our officers for 2020. And as we begin, we have an adoption of our meeting agenda. So looking at our officers and our voting members, if there are no objections. Well, I like it when that happens. So there's no objections, we're moving along. To begin our meetings, we offer the opportunity for public comment for any matters that are not on our agenda for tonight. So if there's an agenda item you'd like to address, we ask you to hold those comments until we get to that item and we have the discussion. And this is for anything that's not on the agenda. If you're in via Zoom, you could use the raise hand button. And if that feature's not working on some mobile devices, sometimes it's not always an active feature if you haven't updated. Or if you're dialed in, you could press *9 and we'll call you by the last few digits of your phone number. So with that said, oops, I'm moving too far. I am moving too far. Is there any public comment tonight? I'm looking at my list. I don't see any hands. Okay. Well, it must be the spirit of the holidays. Nobody wants to jump in. Thank you for that gift. Moving right along. The next item on our agenda, we have an opportunity to have supervisor communications with District 1 Supervisor John Heinel. And so, John, if you're ready, you can unmute yourself and we're ready to hear from you.
I am ready. So the latest news obviously is COVID related with the stay-at-home order that the governor has issued to this 5 different regions. We're in the greater Sacramento region, and we were given notification that effective midnight this Thursday, that we will go into that stay-at-home order category along with San Joaquin County and Southern California, et cetera. So that's created another issue relative to communicating to people what's open and what's closed and how this is all going to work, because it's definitely different than the purple tier, which we've been in. So my current understanding and some of the areas people commonly ask about with respect to churches will be allowed to continue to operate outdoors, practicing, social distancing and wearing masks and all those kinds of things, but churches are going to be able to continue. Our ski resorts up in the Lake Tahoe area, at least the ones in El Dorado County, will remain open. So you can go up and go skiing, but all of the local lodging will be required to shut down except for essential worker type lodging. So what that means is if you're a skier and want to go up skiing, you're going to have to make them day trips unless you have some place to stay other than commercial lodging. So that's a setback to a lot of people, but I think from the ski industries, the ski resorts, it's a plus that at least they can stay open. And I understand they have some extreme measures they've gone to try to make sure that people are socially distanced and protected on the ski lifts, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the good news part of it. There's still a lot of questions related to other things. My understanding right now is all the gymnasiums have to close down, even with outdoor activities. I'm also been told that youth sports has to shut down. I've not been able to find anything from the governor's directives that basically state that. So some of this may not be completely accurate. I'm just trying to give you what my best interpretation is at this point. So it is going to have a major impact on all of us. And once you're shut down, which is going to happen Thursday at midnight, you're shut down for 3 weeks. So the thoughts of having get-togethers and stuff for Christmas, the guidelines say no social gatherings of that type indoors at all. So you're allowed to be with your family unit, but not other family units. So that's going to be a hardship on a lot of people, obviously, who've got the traditional Christmas things going on, at least if you completely adhere to the governor's order. So that's creating a lot of additional tension, stress, mental stress, anxiety. A lot of people are really having a difficult time trying to figure out how to survive in today's world. And so, it's a day by day thing. I think most of you know that El Dorado County submitted a letter directly to the governor. It was called the Healthy Communities Resolution, stating that we feel it's appropriate for the governor to give the local jurisdiction, the Board of Supervisors, our public health officer, representatives from our 2 hospitals, members of our chambers, et cetera, the authority to decide what level and how we operate under the tier structure that the governor's established, but not to have to follow the metrics and the exact prescriptions that he's got, that we could create our own metrics, monitor things from our own perspective, in conjunction with all the other agencies I talked about, and then make decisions hopefully that are more favorable to our local businesses and our youth and everybody else who's affected by it. One of the studies I recently heard was traced back, and this wasn't in California, it was another state, I think it was back in New York State, but they're saying that only about 2% of the COVID spreading is coming out of indoor seating in restaurants, wherein 9%, they've been able to trace it back, is coming from malls. And up until now, indoor seating in restaurants, at least in California, have been shutting down, but you could go to shopping malls, right? So it doesn't seem like we're always following the best data as it's coming out of the governor's office. And there's a lot of different reports. You can find something out there that's probably exactly the opposite of that. So the scientific level of it and the credibility of it, whether it can be verified or not, is very difficult in all these things. But I personally believe that with proper wearing a mask and protection of the stuff, that indoor restaurants are not a major cause for COVID spreading. But everybody has their own opinion, and unfortunately we don't have reliable data that everybody can get behind. So that makes it even more difficult. So that's kind of it on the COVID stuff. More things to come, but it's going to be a very tough close to the calendar year and even into the first part of January. A lot of you have heard, I'm sure, about vaccines coming out and all those kinds of things. And there's now all kinds of stuff in the press, if you've been following it, that are advising better not take the vaccines, because after 6 months, we're going to have a zombie apocalypse. So just craziness everywhere, right? So you have to make your own decisions, unfortunately, in all this stuff. I always look at it that we're given guidance, but ultimately our sheriff is not going to enforce anything. Our El Dorado County departments have no really ability to enforce anything. So I think, that's the message most people have already gotten, but proceed cautiously, be as respectful of others as you can, and try to, the extent possible, make sure that you're protected personally in terms of social distancing and others from catching COVID, because there's been a number of very notable people that have gotten COVID recently, and they just continue to, ramp up that list of names in terms of people that have been affected by it and are hospitalized or not. So I'm going to leave the COVID thing there. We'll ask for questions after it. The second thing I just wanted to make everybody aware of, if you weren't able to attend the Board of Supervisors meeting yesterday, that there was a decision made on the Norm Brown park and ride proposal, wherein by the PFFP, and Kathy's familiar with all this stuff, the Bass Lake area PFFP, they were required to put in 240 parking stalls within the area, not necessarily all on Bass Lake Road, as I understood it. And a plan that the Transit Authority has always talked about is 200. And Norm Brown committed to putting in 100 a long time ago. He also committed to doing the Class 1 bikeway. He came back with a request to have 50 of the 100 stalls transferred to some other development that would follow him. Our Planning Commission reviewed that. The Planning Commission, after hearing all the information and the Planning Department's recommendations, decided to deny his request. It got appealed to the Board of Supervisors. And after a lot of discussion and creativity and trying to figure out how this is all going to work, the Board of Supervisors voted to deny the appeal. So essentially the determination that the Planning Commission made and staff recommended was what we ended up with. So there is a commitment to have to put in those 100 park and ride slots out on Bass Lake Road. I'll mention also the property is currently owned and deeded to the El Dorado County Transit Authority. So it's under the Transit Authority's ability to, initiate when the construction would occur, all those kinds of things. But the Transit Authority had requested from Norm that there might be in lieu fees paid instead of actually construction of the first set of parking spots. And my push was to get something constructed as soon as we can. 50 spots, 50 stalls, I think is adequate for now. But we've seen too many times that agencies sit on money, and then when you go to spend it, the money's worth half what it was when they put it away 5 years ago. And so both Supervisor Parlin and I were pushing hard that we wanted to see that improvement on Bass Lake Road as soon as possible, at least to 50 stalls. So a lot of discussion to go on as to how that actually happens with the Transit Authority. The Transit Authority was trying to get grant monies to double the money up so that if there was 100 stall payment available with grants, matching grants 50-50, that we could get another 100 stalls paid for through either state or federal grants and then complete the full 200 stalls. But with the grant picture getting weaker and weaker as time goes on, less opportunities, the decision I think was made to let's push forward to try to get those installed as soon as possible. And I think John Davey was on the phone call. I know a lot of other people were, so I think they heard the actual back and forth. I was pleased with the result, but there was certainly a lot of differences of opinion. The El Dorado County Chamber weighed in and felt that it was appropriate to transfer 50 of those stalls requirements to another developer. So there was inputs on both sides. But anyway, that's a decision that was made. And with that, I'll just open it up for any questions either on those two subjects or any other subject you might want to ask.
John?
Yes.
Do any of these stalls, is there a requirement that there be electric charging stations?
There is not within the PFFP, but the Transit Authority recognizes that there needs to be electric vehicle parking out there. So, and in fact, we've had a representative from Elon Musk's company actually propose putting in free of charge, recharging units for their vehicle. So I think that kind of funding is readily available in grants, and if not, then it's available through the private manufacturers of the vehicles. So there's nothing that they're committed to on that right now, Ellison, but it certainly needs to be part of the planning. So that was not specifically discussed, but to me, that's inherent whenever you talk about a park and ride type of capability, right?
Thank you.
John, I wanted to ask a question. Being that the sheriff will not enforce the new rules and regulations, what do you think is going to happen with the restaurants?
I think the restaurants will try to stay open as much as they can. I think a lot of them already have outdoor seating that's available. They were trying to comply with that, and they've put tent structures over. They brought heaters in. They're not compliant with how that's supposed to be, but I think they're just going to have to make their own decision as to how they want to operate. And ultimately, I think it's going to be the consumer that determines whether they frequent the establishment and use it, or whether the business is not successful, is what it amounts to. So that's kind of what I'm guessing, because I've seen some of that already in the other areas, not so much El Dorado Hills as in Placerville area, where people are just continuing to do what they talked about doing. So, which is basically no restrictions, right?
John, would the state come in with their own inspectors and slap fines on people?
Originally, going back about 3 months ago, we were told that the ABC, Alcoholic Beverage Control, was going to get engaged working with the counties and stuff, as well as Cal OSHA. That's the way it started. When the board started, actually our environmental management group started working with some of the restaurants that were not in compliance. And after the initial visits and stuff, I guess both of those agencies from the state said they're no longer going to do anything on the enforcement area relative to COVID specific activities. So they backed off. So I don't know. I mean, the governor's always got the ability to threaten, and he's done that evidently, withholding funds for counties that don't force some kind of enforcement. But I don't know, we can't do that. We don't have the staff that's available through the county
Yeah.
in terms of anybody that'll do that. If the sheriff isn't willing to do it, it isn't going to happen. So
I'm sure that it has. What's up?
I think we got
Okay.
somebody that has their.
Yeah, I just muted it, so.
Okay, all right, very good. All right. So that's the status as I know it. It's kind of a free for all. I hate to say that, but that's what it appears to be. And I don't know how it's going to fall. I just hope people don't get so angry and violent that there's a lot of unrest and threats and brandishing firearms and all that kind of stuff. I hope it doesn't come to that, because that would be the absolute worst thing for everybody. But there are some people who are just highly emotional about this whole thing that just can't cope. So
Yeah, on both sides, yeah.
on both sides, yeah. So that's kind of the good and the bad of the whole thing. But we all need to work together. We all need to have our patience and exercise our due diligence in trying to stay as safe as we individually can, and not get COVID ourselves and not spread it if we happen to be an asymptomatic carrier. I mean, that's one of the craziest things about this is you may feel perfectly fine, but you may have picked up the virus somewhere, and then you can transfer it to somebody else. So certainly handshaking, all of those kinds of normal personal contacts, hugging, those are be discouraged, but it comes down to personal choice. It's everyone's individual risk. And so I think you have to weigh it that way. For the very young people, that's the other thing I don't like about the metrics is when you look at studies that have been done by CDC, those individuals under the age of 50 have only attributed 2% of the COVID reported cases. So it's the 50 and above, and particularly as you go up in age, you have more and more people that fit into that category of having been infected, not necessarily hospitalized, but there's a direct relationship between age and percentage of people in that age group that have contracted COVID to the point that they have a significant impact. So those are the kinds of data that I think are fairly reliable that should be used. I mean, we should allow our youth to go out and exercise and do things. The kids should be back in schools. What we need to be concerned with is the administrators, the teachers, all the older people and their individual risk or susceptibility to COVID, and try to protect them to the maximum extent. But the kids don't seem to be the issue. So, it's that kind of stuff that just makes it very difficult to figure out why that information is not being used in the stuff the governor's passing down to us. But I've seen very little of that type of data being used.
Okay, are there any other questions for Supervisor Heinel? I don't see any hands coming up.
Very good, thank you.
All right, well, thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Okay, so next up tonight on our agenda, we have a guest speaker from the Dorado County Transportation Commission. And it's Jerry Barton, Senior Transportation Planner. And he's just going to have a discussion for us to educate our audience tonight, remind us, the distinction of the County Transportation Commission, and some of the things that we've mentioned in previous meetings, the El Dorado Hills Business Park Transportation Plan and the 2020 Active Transportation Plan from earlier this year. So I'm going to stop my screen share, and we're going to welcome Jerry in. And Jerry, if you want to grab the screen to share, it's all yours. And thank you.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak with you all, and hopefully provide some worthwhile information about the Transportation Commission and our role and responsibilities, and then a couple of the planning efforts that we have going on. I was thinking the best way to do this would be to sort of just give you a tour of our website, because much of the information that that we have and that relevant to the projects and our purpose and organization is all there. And I think that'll also provide you help in navigating our site. So the El Dorado County Transportation Commission is a regional transportation planning agency. We're a joint powers authority, basically a state designated agency for planning transportation on the western slope of El Dorado County. So that does not include the Tahoe Basin. Tahoe Basin falls under the TRPA, or Tahoe Regional Planning Agency jurisdiction. We have 3 city council members and 4 county supervisors on our commission. And there they are. Of course, Supervisor Heinel is a commissioner on the Transportation Commission. And so in our role as the regional transportation planning agencies, one of the big things that we do is develop the 20-year regional transportation plan. And we just completed the county's regional transportation plan for the 20-year period between 2020 and 2040. And it was no small feat completing this plan as it was getting to the finish line here during almost a full year of COVID. But we did do that, and we just adopted it, and the entire document is available here on our website for you to review if you so choose to. But I think just to sort of outline that, the policy element kind of gives additional information about our role and responsibility, and then the geographical area that we live in and plan for, as well as the demographics and future projections looking out 20 years. We identify some of the regional transportation issues, and then we have goals, objectives, and strategies for transportation. And then, so that's kind of in a really high level, that's the policy element. The action element looks more closely at the transportation modes that we deal with. And of course, air quality conformity in California is an important part of one of the things that we do and are involved in. It's a little different for us because we're part of the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, the SACOG region in Sacramento. And so we're within that air basin. So we work closely with them to achieve air quality conformity for the Sacramento region. Sustainability is something that we, consistent with regional transportation plan guidelines from the state, had to address and looking at climate change and greenhouse gases and those types of things. And then, of course, we plan for highways, streets, and interregional roadways. And a lot of those are Caltrans facilities, including the US 50 corridor and State Route 49. And then the transit system, including park and ride lots, as was just discussed, and the importance of them as a option for people to drive their car to the park and ride lot and maybe take commuter transit to Sacramento. And then aviation to a smaller degree. We really one of our roles as the Transportation Commission is to also serve as the Airport Land Use Commission. So in that role, we protect the land around the airports so that the airports can still be a viable option for transportation for goods movement and the other things that aviation can do for us. We have 3 airports, one in Georgetown, Placerville, Cameron Park. I feel like I might be forgetting one, but anyway, so that's the aviation chapter. And then we have active transportation, which is the terminology that we're using for getting around by bicycle or walking. And there's a health tie there that is really being recognized on the state level. So that's hence the name active transportation. And then transportation systems management is really, in a nutshell, that has to do with a lot of the communication systems that we're seeing in transportation, and as well as looking at the transportation system on a whole and sort of systemically, as instead of just looking at it within our county's boundaries, to look at things from a broader standpoint. And then also maintenance kind of falls under that category. So that's the action element. And the financial element kind of helps us determine what types of fund sources we might use to implement this 20-year plan. And this plan actually has to be fiscally constrained which means that we have to project that we have enough funding to build the projects that are included in it through state and federal sources and some local sources to some degree. So those are all based on projections. Of course, it's very fluid, but we do have here a fiscally constrained plan. So, and of course, we did this with a lot of public involvement. That's here in Appendix A. We have outlined all the public involvement that we did to develop the plan, and our advisory committees and some other things that are in the appendix. And this document was covered by an environmental impact report, which is also here. So anyway, that's just to kind of really put it into perspective about what we do. The RTP is actually required to receive state and federal funding for projects. A lot of the programs, the grant programs, discretionary programs, et cetera, that we might seek funding through federal and state sources require that projects be included in the RTP and also be considered for the air quality conformity portion as well. So anyway, that's the RTP. And then I can also sort of direct you to some of the current projects, and some of these kind of can highlight some of the things that the commission has funding in. If we use the term programmed, which means setting aside funding for projects, and all the projects listed here, the commission has programmed some money to, and some of them are studies, others are actual projects. Silver Valley Harvard Way intersection improvements project is here, and there's some of the funding. There's acronyms in here, but those are defined in the end of this document when you review the whole document. But anyway, I don't want to get in too much depth here, but I could probably talk all night. So I think maybe I'll just sort of stop here and ask you if you have any questions about the commission and our role. And so I don't get in too much detail, maybe I'll just kind of open it up for any questions.
If you have a question, go ahead and click the raise hand button. If you don't have that feature, go ahead and just speak up. And if you're on the phone, you can press *9. And to start us off, in case there's nobody coming in yet, when the commission's looking for, I know you assist the transportation department when you're looking at grant funding. I know that the world around grant funding in the state of California is a little different than it was perhaps even 4 years ago. Is that something that's sort of on the wane in terms of the roadways? It's more focused on pedestrian and bicycle facilities. Is that correct?
So yeah, that's a pretty big question, and transportation funding is no simple task to understand. I have actually, you can't quite see it, but up here behind me is what they call Chart C, and that's kind of outlines the flow of transportation funding in California. And there are multiple fund sources and different types of fund sources. We sort of call it color of money, certain types of funding that are dedicated for certain types of projects. And within that, some of them have particular requirements for the project type, and some of them are competitive. So it's really a very broad ranged topic of discussion. So I mean, if you were to say, how do I get El Dorado Hills overlaid, that there might be 3 options that I could come up with off the top of my head. You would think about maybe SB1, which is the gas tax increase that was recently approved. There might be some options through there. There might be some options through surface transportation block grant funding, which some of that funding is apportioned directly to the commission, and we can allocate that to a project at the county. or city. And then some of that funding the county gets directly. And then the county also gets their own portion of gas tax funding, which they can use for road maintenance. And, you know, there's a chance there might be a grant program out there that we could compete for that project. So that's really what we do here, you know, at the Transportation Commission, is we try to help the county and city and Caltrans deliver, you know, large scale transportation projects. And we also, the funding for the transit system flows through our agency, and we also do the planning for the transit system. So, and, you know, that same thing I just described for, you know, example, El Dorado Hills Overlay Project, that comes into play with a active transportation project if we're going to build a bike path, or not as much for a transit stop. Transit funding is a little bit more dedicated. They have a number of their own fund sources and grant programs, but that's generally the way of the world here at the EDCTC.
Are there any
Fun stuff, right?
Well, yeah, because we talk about it all the time when you're not here. So
yeah,
it's a great opportunity that you're here this evening. And there's no hand going up yet, but I was going to ask, in terms of when you established the sort of the 20-year plan, you know, there's some identifiable projects in there that are desirable. How difficult is it to project when we're talking about these projects? You know, you have an idea of many different avenues of securing funding, but in terms of timelines, you know, the one I keep citing is that, you know, at the Silver Springs Parkway Southern connection to Bass Road, the connection that's under construction right now, that 10 years ago was, you know, the CIP, it was listed at just, I think, 6.5 million. And, you know, in the CIP this year, I think it's almost 12. It's like 11 something. So as projects are extended over many years, you know, you can't control costs, obviously, and you guys are doing your best to try to determine, hey, how's this going to spin out on us? You know, we've identified some avenues of funding something, but, you know, if that funding either is there or isn't there, but then the other factor is, you know, you can't control the cost of labor, materials, new regulations. I mean, that's a difficult meal to make, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so a lot of those things that you're talking about are really on the engineering side. You know, we're typically dealing with projects, you know, from their early conception, and once we program or set aside the funding for a project, you know, maybe by phase. Sometimes that would be the environmental phase. We get
All three today. It was the APAC meeting, which is the El Dorado. It tells you what new.
Hold on, I just had a mute button.
Yeah.
There we go.
I know. I understand how Zoom works. So, yeah, essentially, you know, maybe we'll program some funding to a project for the PA&ED. We call that project approval environmental document phase, and then PS&E plan specifications and estimates. That's basically takes care of the environmental and engineering phases of a project. And we might do something like that, and then an agency like the county or city can work toward getting a project fully designed and determine really what those real costs might be. And as we continue to work with them to identify or fully fund the project through construction. So there's a lot of that happens, you know, phasing and that type of thing. And even so much that, like here in Placerville, we've been working on the Ray Lawyer Drive interchange. We built, you know, so far 2 ramps and a park and ride lot, and all of those were each individual phases. So that's a pretty common procedure, especially here in a rural county where we just don't see the types of tens of millions of dollars that you might see in an urban area.
Jerry, can I ask you a question?
Hi, John. I hope you're doing well.
And I hope you are too. I'm trying to stay well. How successful were you this year in getting state and federal funds?
Oh, boy, I wish I had that off the top of my head. I know that the financial element does outline some of our historical funding levels. And, you know, I mean, when you say that generally, you know, we have some funding that flows to us annually, and some of them vary depending on the apportionment levels and that type of thing. So those are sort of dedicated fund sources. I mean, if you're talking about grants in particular, or grant funded projects, yeah, I'd really have to do some research, but I do know that you know, we didn't have a huge role in it, but we helped prepare and at least participate in supporting the application for local partnership program funds that the county got $5.5 million for the Diamond Springs Parkway recently. So, but yeah, I don't. Maybe we should have a list, running list of a tally of our successful grant awards. But you know, that's really, I think our success is in the projects that we deliver and the plans that we develop. And you know, you can look at our website and see all those projects and all the funding that's associated with them, and get a pretty good sense of the order of magnitude. It's big. There's a lot of money flows through this agency.
Okay.
Jerry, Tim White, wondering if you could give us a little more information on the proposed El Dorado Hills Business Park and ride area. I mean, since we're here in El Dorado Hills, a lot of our residents, at least when they were commuting down to Sacramento, were taking advantage of that. And I know you had some very early on, there were some very ambitious plans for that transportation park. So can you tell us where we are right now?
Sure. So yeah, let me, I'm going to go ahead and screen share again and see if I can find the document that we just completed. And it would be multimodal. And it's the County Line Transit Center. Pardon me, because this is not my project. It's my colleague, Dan Bolster. It might be under transit. It would make sense. County Line Multimodal Transit Center. So that's the document that we completed in 2019. This was my colleague, Dan Bolster, prepared this plan. And, you know, it looked at a number of different options for developing a park and ride in the El Dorado Hills area. And the idea was that this park and ride would serve commuter transit and provide a fueling station, a regional fueling station. So, you know, unfortunately, I'm not prepared to speak to this to any level of specificity, but I know that a number of parcels were looked at, and you know, considerations for the future and transportation options, as well as a regional fueling and that type of thing, recognizing that the park and ride at White Rock there is over capacity. But, you know, what I can offer is that, you know, maybe my colleague Dan Bolster could speak to this group and talk more specifically about that. I mean, I do have the El Dorado Hills Business Park Community Transportation Plan on the agenda to talk about here next. So there's definitely a tie to this a little bit. So I should probably brush up on that a little bit more. But
that's fine. We were just curious. You know, Dan presented you know, the details of that study and where you guys were going with the process last year. And, you know, we attended several of the workshops here in El Dorado Hills. So, you know, we're eager to hear what's going on with that. I know that the Transit Authority had mentioned during both the Planning Commission hearing and the appeal hearing at the Board of Supervisors that, I know during the Planning Commission hearing, they had mentioned that, you know, they were identifying some properties for the potential for that transit center was more in line with the along the business park. But I think during the Planning Commission hearing, they had mentioned that they were looking also a little closer at properties along Silva Valley at US 50 interchange. So we didn't know if that's an official change yet. It's just, I imagine it's still all moving parts. So the Transit Authority can probably speak to that too. So perhaps we'll, when that settles down, I'll drop a message to Dan and see if there's a good time for maybe he and the Transit Authority to make a follow-up presentation.
yeah, I think that'd be a great idea. And I'll probably follow along just to hear the discussion, so I'm up to date on this as well.
Super.
So John,
Yeah.
let me add something since I'm also on the Transit Authority. The Transit Authority defined 5 properties that were potential, and that was downsized to 3, but obviously it's an acquisition type process with negotiations involved. So it's not widely broadcast where those properties might be. And there was intentions to bring forward to the Transit Authority's board, options to make movement on stuff until COVID hit. And COVID has basically shut everything down because we've had to dramatically downsize our transit runs. We've had to basically riff, have a reduction in force, lay people off of the Transit Authority. So we're in a kind of a wait and watch mode and trying to rebuild as much as we can and get back on track. But my guess is it's going to be, at least another year or more before we get back into talking about new facilities with what's happened as a result of COVID. So, and
Yeah,
it could change
yeah.
everything. The commuters down to Sacramento, that commuter run was the one that the Transit Authority used to make money on. And if nobody has to commute to work anymore down in Sacramento, that transit run is going to end, right? So who knows?
Yeah, I got a family member here, state employee that does that, and it is a great service, and it does get people off the highway.
Yep.
And I know they had mentioned numbers like a 90% reduction in ridership, so that's significant. So that's a full stop. But yeah, when the time's appropriate, we'd love to have Dan come back and update us on maybe how this has changed a little bit and where it's going. So and I know that you had mentioned, and we have on the agenda that we talked about the business park transportation plan, which we heard a little bit about. I did sit on some of those workshops, so it's an intriguing study and analysis of what's going on in the business parks and some transportation plans. So if you want to jump into that.
Yeah, sure. So the Eldorado Hills Business Park transportation plan was initiated really by some of the property owners and business owners had brought it to our attention that there was really a lack of connectivity between sort of the town center and the greater community of Eldorado Hills. The business park is a bit of an island, and from a transportation standpoint, I think they were really specifically kind of talking about active transportation. But as we dive a little further into this, we sort of learned a few things about business parks and the way they're developing today, and recognize the economic development tie that exists here with the business park. The business park, as it is currently planned and in its current state, has really not met the expectations that were anticipated initially, some 20 plus years ago, in terms of its economic development and employment center, from an employment center standpoint. And so, we as transportation planners recognize that if we could have more people working in El Dorado County, it would help to reduce or improve our jobs housing balance and reduce the number of people that are commuting to Sacramento every day for jobs. So it was sort of from that standpoint that we prepared a grant application to develop the El Dorado Hills Business Park Community Transportation Plan. We were successful in obtaining funding. And so we're working with a consultant to prepare the plan, and we're doing this essentially all virtually with our public outreach. We initiated a survey right before COVID hit, but that was right as people started working from home. So it wasn't super successful in getting responses. So we transitioned to the virtual realm, and we did prepare these three-part videos that that part one talks about improving business park competitiveness, and then 2 kind of gives an overview of the business park today, as I was just kind of talking about the slow growth of the business park as an economic center and employment center. And then we talked a bit about the tie to transportation and potential transportation networks that would support the business park under 3 different land use scenarios. And so we have developed the 3 land use scenarios, and essentially the first one looks at the business park as it's currently planned under its, essentially it's sort of the base case scenario. And that's the scenario that is ongoing and the scenario that hasn't been really successful, but we have to have something to sort of compare to. And then we looked at a second scenario, which reduces the research and development zoning in the business park and adds more residential and other services and amenities. And if you have a chance to watch these videos, I think you'll find them really informative and kind of understanding the current trends today in business park development and the types of places and communities that are attracting employers and employees, and really creating a job center. So anyway, if you have a chance to check that out, but that's what we do outline the scenarios. And again, the second reduces the research and development and adds residential. And then the third, it essentially intensifies the research and development by improving the floor area ratio, which basically means having more businesses within the existing buildings and properties that are there. And then adding residential and other associated services and amenities. So that's the third scenario. And then we're looking at each of those scenarios, and they're all conceptual. There's nothing really behind them. I mean, the general plan is at what the general plan is today, but we wanted to do this plan to really scope out the tie between, economic development, employment centers, land use, transportation, and then, under those scenarios, if those were to play out, then how would we respond to that with transportation improvements, and how could we fund those improvements with grants? And an important thing to note, and I think this kind of plays into our little bit of our discussion earlier, is that having a plan in place, like a plan like this and others, really helps us develop grant applications for funding projects. And it helps to really tell a story and say, hey, we've engaged the public and we've worked really hard to understand what their needs are and what their desires are. And this is a project that is supported by the public, and we understand that it's going to be effective in improving transportation. And that's why, we should receive the federal or state funding to build these projects. So so that's the El Dorado Hills Business Park Community Transportation Plan. One of the things that I have going on right now is I'm reviewing we prepared a frequently asked questions table, and that's going to be added to this website. And then we also have a summary of the virtual open house so people can review that. And the entire document should be available early this spring, or just in early 2021, probably not as late as spring, but so this is something that's ongoing now, and I definitely encourage the members and others who are in attendance today to watch these videos. And then I'll make you aware, John, as soon as the FAQs and summary are available, so folks who maybe don't want to dig too deep can just at least look that stuff over and understand what's going on there. So with that, I'll open up to any questions on the El Dorado Hills Business Park Community Transportation Plan.
We do have the videos embedded and linked on the APAC website, and when the workshop was ongoing, we were sharing that so people were aware of it. So, and yeah, when you have when there's updates, we are very interested in sharing that, making those available so the public can see it. The videos themselves are very informative. They're not super long, so they're watchable, and I think it does paint a picture for some options there in the community for El Dorado Hills and around the business park to maybe gain some improvements. So
I'd like to ask Jerry a question. You said that the planning has been funded, to do the planning. Who's doing the funding for this planning?
So this particular project, the planning was funded by, through the Caltrans Sustainable Communities Transportation Planning Grant Program. This particular grant, though, I think this this project was funded by state planning and research funds, but you know, the sort of color of money is, I think, less important than the program that you apply within, and that is the Sustainable Communities Transportation Planning Grant Programs.
Now, I was just interested in how much of the funding was done by the developers for your plan.
So this plan is not developer funded. So it's a transportation plan, and it's, you know, we do have a tie to land use, you know, because when we talk as transportation planners, we often talk about, you know, the chicken and egg, right? What comes first? Do you plan the interchange before the development goes in, or do you let the land use start developing and then recognize that you have a transportation need and then develop the interchange? Well, you know, I think one of the things that's really happening right now, and I think, you know, to be really frank about with this, about this plan, is that the county is getting a lot of development requests to change the general plan.
Is this movie?
So
Oh.
because that is happening, I think it's important for us as planners to be prudent and develop a plan to say, you know, if this scenario were to play out, these are what the transportation needs would be, and these are what the housing levels might look like, and you know, what the employment base might be, and how that might you know, impact things throughout the county. So, or really throughout the El Dorado Hills region anyway.
All right, thank you, Jerry.
So, yeah.
Are there any more questions about the active transportation plan, or about the transportation plan for the business park? Okay, I don't see any hands coming up. Okay, and I think the only other thing we really had expressed some curiosity about was the active transportation plan, and that's a pretty detailed plan. But if you want to maybe highlight it, and maybe identify something with impacts here in El Dorado Hills that might be appropriate for our audience, we'd love to hear anything you wanted to volunteer for that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And yeah, so the active transportation plan that was completed last year, actually, I think maybe we adopted it in 2020 in February, actually. It is the first active transportation plan in the western slope of the county to include a pedestrian element. Previously, we had a bicycle transportation plan, so it was just looking at bicycle facilities, and this one actually also looks at sidewalks. So I'll screen share again and pull up a map. Okay, are you seeing that? Yeah. You see the map? Can't quite tell what you're seeing yet. I have two screens, so I'm not really sure.
So yeah, we can see the map, so you're good.
Okay, so what's represented here? Different facility types, and I'll define those for you. I don't have a diagram to pull up, but I'll explain them to you. The green lines represent a class 1 shared use path. So that's essentially a bike path. They're typically minimum of 8 feet wide. And you have one or two along El Dorado Hills Boulevard. One is near the business park, and the other is up in the north area between the CSD and Serrano Parkway. So does everyone kind of understand what a class 1 bike path is? It's an off-street facility, 2-way directional traffic. It has minimal intersections with roadway traffic and is off-street. It's a very comfortable facility for even the most introductory or basic timid rider or walker, really. And then a class 2 bike lane is a 4-foot striped shoulder along a roadway, and you have that up here on Green Valley, Sophia Parkway, and in some areas of White Rock Road and Latrobe Road. The solid lines represent existing facilities, and then the dashed lines represent proposed facilities. The yellow is a class 2 bicycle lane. And then the red is a class 3 bicycle route, and that's essentially just a roadway that's designated for bicycling. Usually these are low car speed or low traffic volume roads. And in our case, like in the case of Malcolm Dixon and Deer Valley, these are also highly preferred or sought out recreational routes. So these are existing class 3 bike routes. And then some of the proposed ones are just really to kind of tie together some of those other facilities that are class 2 bike lanes and sidewalk. So I realize now that I only pulled the bicycle facilities document up. So let me see if I can find the pedestrian facilities map. Are there any questions about the bicycle facilities map while I'm searching for the pedestrian map?
I'll jump in with one real quick. And so for the proposed facilities, are they primarily along existing right-of-ways, or are there right-of-ways that need to be obtained to basically facilitate them?
I would say generally, most of them are in existing right-of-ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that one thing that's compelling, I think, I'm in the Bass Lake area, that, there's a proposed class 1 path along the edge of Bass Lake. That's an existing facility it's a facility that does not exist now. And with the new shopping center that's in now at Santa Ridge, a lot of people have been asking, well, hey, how can we get over there? And with the CSD, efforting to get underway with the regional park at Bass Lake, how do we connect those eastern neighborhoods in El Dorado Hills to the park facility and make it safe for pedestrians and for bicyclists, children?
Are you talking about this piece where I'm pointing right now?
Hold on, I'm looking where you're pointing. Let's see.
Between Bass Lake Road, I don't know if you can see my mouse there. Along the lake.
Yeah, along the lake, basically from Silver Springs to Serrano Parkway.
Yeah. Okay. And that was a section that was particularly requested by the CSD to have us include.
Yeah.
So
and
yeah,
then
right here.
Another one of those, as you're looking for that pedestrian map, is that you explained, like on the red, where it's basically an area that's appropriate for that bicycle facility. That you're not really going to be constructing a class 1 path or the 4-foot lane. There's an example that's one that's proposed to go through the Woodridge development in the Bass Lake Village area that would go along Summer Drive and would connect to the south with another proposed path, in the green, obviously, that would come up, it looks like along Hollow Oaks and drop back down. So those are, as you had mentioned, those are sort of low speed, 20, 25 mile an hour roadways inside of some residential areas, or maybe there's some 35 mile an hour, but it's just a better fit for sort of a simpler bike route.
Right. You wouldn't want to, in some cases you might really need to make that connection, and it may not be the best connection, but you try to keep it short. And I think that's kind of an example for like Oxford Road. If you've been on Oxford Road, it'd be really challenging to add 4-foot shoulders to that road, but it's an important connection between Cambridge and Cameron Park Drive. So that's why that's designated as a class 3 there, as opposed to a class 2. And, we tried to be as reasonable as we could about these proposed segments, and, recognizing that these things are very expensive to build, and we don't want to tear out people's front yards if we can avoid it, to add bike lanes. So I think that's kind of a good example. But yes, that is the idea behind the bike route, is that it would be a connector or a generally a lower car speed road or lower traffic volume.
Jerry,
I've got a question.
I'm sorry, who jumped in? Jerry, I've mentioned this to you many, many, many times before. In my experience, the bike routes in El Dorado Hills are a hodgepodge of trails that connect and sometimes they don't connect. And for somebody riding a bike, some of these things are very, very dangerous. Getting under Highway 50 is probably the most dangerous thing I've ever come across in my entire life. And, you know, you get up to El Dorado Hills Boulevard and yes, you're off the road and then you're up high and then you come down and then you got to cross the street to get to the other part of a bike path that goes to Francisco, which is one of the ugliest pieces of road that I've ever seen in my life. These things have to be connected. Okay, you can't have these things not connected. Otherwise, they present a real danger to anybody on a bike. It's, you know, it's ludicrous, some of these things. And I want to mention that to you. We don't have traffic capability signaling to pick up a bike. Sometimes if you want to change the lights, you got to go up on the sidewalk with the bike to change the light. All of that is it's detrimental to anybody using a bike to do any kind of transportation. And if you go back to pedestrian, we have areas that have no sidewalks. How do we not have a sidewalk right outside of the town center? You know, how do you do that? You know, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I've mentioned this to you before, and I'm mentioning it again. And thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no problem, John. And, you know, like I said, I think, you know, we're striving to build a quality connected network. And that's, you know, why we have the map and why we keep seeking funding for projects. So.
Okay. And did you want to go on with the pedestrian or?
I can. I was.
Well, before you
found the
go
map.
to the pedestrian, I've got a question on this map.
Sure. Go ahead. I could probably answer it without even looking at it, but
Okay.
I'm going to try to find the pedestrian map if I can.
Okay. It appears to show a projected Class 1 bikeway from El Dorado Hills Boulevard to Silva Valley that appears to run along the side of the freeway, or is it on the freeway?
Oh, it would never be on the freeway.
El Dorado Hills Boulevard. Hang on 1 second. I think I'll go ahead and. Oh no, I don't have it. Hang on a second here. Oh, it's in this chapter. So. Okay. So you said El Dorado Hills Boulevard. Can you repeat the segment again?
The segment runs along, it looks like it runs along the side of the north side of Highway 50 from El Dorado Hills Boulevard to Silva. And
Yeah.
then turns into a Class 3 crossing Silva, turns into a Class 1 for a short period, and then a Class 3 up Old Bass Lake Road.
Right. Yeah, so that section is essentially along the old golf course property. So that's and making the connection to Silva Valley. And I think our mapping may not be entirely perfect there in terms of how it would transition through the Silva Valley interchange or under or over. It might go to an intersection. I mean, you know, this is definitely a high level plan, and, you know, the engineering design, once this becomes a project and we're actually pursuing it or moving it forward, the particular design would be considered at that time. But it is anticipated that, you know, the section of, I think it was previously Tong Road, would be a Class 3 once you get across or through the interchange. So that's what that's attempting to capture there. And then there's a little piece of class 1 kind of, up the hill to get to Old Bass Lake Road to, I think to conform mostly to ADA, because otherwise someone might not be able to make it up that steep hill there at the end of Tong Road.
Okay.
That is a steep hill.
Yeah.
That'll run through the Central El Dorado Hills project and EDH 52 and also the Country Club extension.
Right.
Thank you.
Jerry, I want to ask you a question. Is it possible that whenever they build a new road, that the bike lane, that the shoulders be marked as a bike lane? Like the new section on Bass Lake Road, going up to the traffic light, that you do have shoulders. Could no shoulders be marked as a bike lane? And the new Country Club roadway, could that be marked also as a bike lane? Is that something that could be required?
Well, if I mean, in terms of striping as a bike lane, they have to have the width there to do that. And I'm just not sure the shoulder width is there for Bass Lake Road. But yeah, that's the, it is a proposed class 2. I'm not exactly sure what the engineering design is on that section right now. That would be a question more directly for DOT engineering.
Okay.
So this is the map that displays the existing and proposed pedestrian and disabled improvements. So those represent the sidewalks as well as the class 1 shared use paths.
Is that still the bike path we're seeing? The bike projects?
Yeah, the green still
Okay.
represents the class 1s,
Okay,
but
gotcha.
the other colors, the gray solid line is existing sidewalk, and then the I don't know, it's a pinkish color, represents sidewalk on one side, and the blue is representing adding sidewalks.
We're not getting that map. We have.
Yeah, I think we're still seeing the bike one.
Yeah.
We're
Oh,
seeing
really?
The bike one.
Chapter 7 in.
Okay, let me see. I'm not sure why. Let me see what I can do here.
If you're dealing with multiple screens like me.
Yeah, I am. So
Sorry about that.
I'm just gonna stop sharing and then
Reshare it.
back in here. Okay, so that would be the
There you go.
pedestrian map.
Awesome.
So, and then there's also spot improvements here, and I think one of the things important to note is that there is a overcrossing, a pedestrian and bicycle overcrossing proposed over US 50, basically between like the vicinity of the Nugget Market and the Rayleigh Center.
Yeah, we saw sort of a high-level look at potential funding for the design. Not necessarily the engineering, but at least the design from the central project.
Yeah.
I can tell you that many people did not like that overpass, the construction of that overpass, because you'd have to go into the town center, then go up a ramp, around the ramp, and then back down again. It's many people did not like that design. They would rather have something go directly under 50 and go straight, okay, rather than take a detour with this overpass.
Yeah, I think you're going way back, John. That was that design was contemplated some time ago. I think that they're looking at some different options now.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Yeah, we haven't seen that. That was a concern from our subcommittee with Central, was that the pedestrian overpass that it seemed to end in the central project that would primarily serve that residential use back there, and maybe a little bit of the Rayleighs, but somebody who's on the west side of El Dorado Hills Boulevard, there's a lot of moving around, moving parts, as it were. And then plus we know that looking at the project in Rancho Cordova, how just ridiculously expensive it is to get a facility over the highway. So, that was another concern we had when we were looking at it. But yeah, if there's another plan that's ready for public hearing, we'd be eager to see it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else that?
Yeah,
anyone
let's see if
would
there's
like
any
to
more
talk about?
questions for Jerry. We got him on the hot seat tonight.
I would like to see if they're going to build any sidewalks around town center, on the outside of town center and along the side of town center going on White Rock.
So there is a proposed section here between Blackstone and looks like maybe going over toward Latrobe and White Rock. There's some gap closures there along White Rock Road that are proposed.
Can you repeat the colors? What does pink mean?
That is sidewalk on one side, and then the solid gray is a sidewalk on both sides. And then the blue is a proposed sidewalk. So it looks like there's actually a sidewalk on one side of some of White Rock. It just looks like there's some gap closures needed there.
Well, it ends, the sidewalk ends right after Post. So it goes from Latrobe to Post, and then that's the end of the sidewalk. And going
It
in,
picks back up at Target.
say that again?
It picks back up at Target on the Target side, but there are huge
Yeah,
gaps.
There's a big gap in between, yeah.
Yeah.
And going the other way, if we were on Latrobe and we were walking from White Rock and tried to get into town center, there's no sidewalk there at all on either side.
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
I think that's consistent with what I was saying. There's some gap closures to be addressed in that area.
So it's safe to say that the commission right now has been looking at sort of, connecting those missing links as part of the overall strategy of as El Dorado Hills continues to build out and as the county builds out, that, that's a focus of the commission is to, when there's facilities lacking or there's missing links, that you're looking to find ways, creative ways that are, respectful of the money you got to go get and how, the timing. But when you look at these plans, there's a lot of proposed, a lot of dotted lines. So I think as a community, everyone's happy to see that at least there's some attention being paid to it. Obviously you're not building them, but identifying where those deficiencies are at, I think that's really important. I was going to mention that in our comments tonight, Eric Fetchter has had a couple observations. One of them was that connecting North El Dorado Hills with South El Dorado Hills for bikes or pedestrians is a nice addition. And John sort of highlighted that about the connectivity, whether it's the pedestrian overpass or improvements under 50. And then Eric's other observation was connecting North El Dorado Hills as well as East El Dorado Hills and South it's a big deal. It's critical, basically up to the Bass Lake area, because that's where a lot of developments going on right now for the Bass Lake Hills specific plan. And his concern is that you got to make sure that as a plan that we're considering this. So.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to ask if there are any more questions, because I think we've used all of Jerry's free time tonight. So,
Yeah.
Jerry.
Well, I appreciate, everyone being here and hearing and understanding about the commission and what we do. And so hopefully you can take some time and look at our website and sort of get yourself up to date on the many different things that we have going on. And, feel free to follow up with me via email. And, I'm happy to try to answer any more specific questions if needed.
And again, we want to thank you because it's a lot of time, and it's our scope might have been a little wide tonight, but it was a great opportunity to have you here to touch on these things, because we usually don't get those answers when we're talking among ourselves. it's a lot of disconnected information. So it was very valuable, and we appreciate you spending the time tonight with us. And the invitation's always here for anybody at the commission. Whenever there's an update that you want to share information about, we're here once a month. So
All right,
well,
great.
thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Jerry.
All right, appreciate it. I will sign off, and you all have a nice evening, and stay safe.
Yeah,
You too.
stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. So the next item on our agenda is we're very basic projects, and it's not a project but, that we're reviewing right now. It's just a notification, no review. It was an application put in for a design review for the Latrobe Road R&D complex, and I believe that that Louis is here tonight. Louis, are you available?
I'm here.
There you are. Hey, do you want me to leave this on the screen for you?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna let you jump ahead. I'm just gonna leave that picture, the sort of the site map. It's kind of a rough look, but if you want to explain what's going on, I mean, we have a little bit of the details from the description, but it's your project. We'd love to hear from you what's available to share right now.
Okay. Well, it's really simple. This project is under design review for El Dorado County. It is R&D. It's been zoned R&D. It was part of the original Valley View specific plan. We had an R&D. There was traffic analysis and so forth done on it. We pulled it out of that when when we sold the property. We didn't sell it with the property, and we held it out to do self-storage. Then we did a special use permit on the whole property to do self-storage with the idea that in the future we might take the front half and either do more storage or do R&D. With what's going on today, I don't need to say it. There's no need for any more storage in El Dorado Hills, or probably El Dorado County in a whole. The thing that I'm looking at to put here is R&D, kind of like the old flex buildings, divisible from 1,000, 1,500 square feet, warehouse type, just a straight warehouse building. Right now, a lot of people are looking for those small spaces to have. They have internet businesses, they have things going on. They just need a little warehouse to process merchandise. There's also a thing going on, which this probably won't work for it, maybe not on an Amazon level, but there's the last mile, as we call it in the industry now. And that's where a group like Amazon is going to be sending up one semi truck instead of a bunch of delivery trucks to your residence, go to a warehouse, central warehouse. And then from there, within the 5-mile radius, then smaller vehicles will deliver everything instead of having 25 people drive.
Oops, we might have lost you there for a minute there, Lee.
Great stuff.
There you go.
It's the green footprint. What like I said, what I'm doing is very simple. It's R&D. The only use that I could say that I've got going there is that we're intending to move my wife's party rental business there into a bigger facility. And that's about it. I mean, everything else is just I'm building it on spec to see what happens.
And so right now you have the design review. I expect, will they be scheduling a TAC meeting to look at that?
Yeah.
Okay. And I know that
we're gonna have a TAC meeting. We're gonna have all the normal stuff. I'm glad you called me up because I always like to be upfront with you guys and
yeah,
what's going on and engage and.
Yeah, and the reason, when we see new projects that are going in and that they're in their initial stages, we know that, there's a lot of things and elements that aren't defined yet, that it might just be a basic design review. It looks pretty straightforward. So we were just going to notify, our audience and members of the public, hey, here's a project that's been submitted, more information to come. you know, based on interest from our members, you know, would determine how much, you know, we might want to provide some feedback to you, or how much you even want from us. You might ask us for something, we don't know. But we did want to let you know that, you know, we wanted to at least share it with the community tonight. I know that Matt from the planning department had talked about calling in, and I don't know, Matt, are you available? Is there anything that you wanted to, there you are, hey.
Yep, I'm available here. Well, Louis gave a pretty good overview there of the project. So I don't really have a whole lot more to add unless there's additional questions. But I did want to kind of introduce myself since I have several projects coming up to the committee. And here in the coming years, I'll have a good number of them. So
we appreciate you taking the time to meet with us virtually tonight. You know, Mel's been down here a lot in the past, and other planners as well over the years, but it's a great opportunity for us to at least hear from you tonight. We appreciate you taking the time. It's a long day to be here at 8:30 at night, but it's, you know, it's we look forward to hearing more from you on projects as they come before us. And you know, we're volunteers, and we're providing our non-expert feedback to the process. So again, we thank you for that. Okay, are there any questions? Oops. Okay. Are there any questions for either Matt or for Louis for some of the details of this this sort of first look at this?
I have a quick question. The drive aisle that is kind of on the border of it, is that exiting out to Monteverde, or does that dead end? Because there is currently an access road there.
Yes, it does. It goes into Monteverde. That was always intended to be there for the project. As a matter of fact, that section of Monteverde, we dedicated it, that entrance. Monteverde couldn't have connected to Latrobe Road without our property and our connection. So it exits on what was our property, and we have rights to Monteverde there.
Yeah, so you have like basically a driveway easement there.
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's
right away.
Egress on the tentative map that was part of it. I mean, you could see kind of that line that comes down all the way to Latrobe. That was kind of the original parcel line there.
And so
the dashed line.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry, I should put a mouse on it. You're talking about just the property line right here.
That was the old property line.
Louis, and just for clarity, this is in District 2, right? So you're working with the new supervisor on this.
Well, I will be.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, Louis, looking at the update, and at least in our agenda, it says that the project may consist of a potential mix of industrial, commercial, residential, civic transportation. What is residential just sort of thrown in there? Because I don't see anything in that plan that looks to be residential in nature.
That's not resident. I don't know.
And that's straight out of the county website.
That came out of the county paperwork, I think.
So there's no residential component planned.
I'm not planning any residential. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not planning any residential. I mean, you never know what might happen in the future. There might be some kind of, you know, with all of the stuff that's going on, a situation where somebody might have a warehouse that they're renting and put in a loft. I don't know how that's going to work. So.
But you're not thinking mixed use at all, right?
I'm not thinking mixed use. No.
Okay. That would be the application of residential in there.
Exactly.
I'm not sure it's a good fit.
I am not thinking mixed use. I'm not thinking what they're doing in the business park. No. I'm just going straight with what the entitlement is for R&D property, for R&D, and the uses that are listed within the county are the uses that we're looking to do there. Beyond the party rental business, that's all I've got there. I don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Okay. And then so for that initial, your initial use that, you know, that you're looking for yourself, do you have a timeline that you're hoping for, or are you just waiting to see how it plays out?
Oh, no, I'm hoping to be in there by, well, I need to be in there by fall next year. So.
Okay, then we'll look forward to hearing about the TAC meeting. And if there's anything that you think will benefit you in the project as you move along, of course, you always have an invitation here. So
yeah, and let me just one other thing that we're trying to do on the elevations, again, trying to keep this, they're warehouse buildings. I've got some really unique things that we're working with, and some materials and products that I've been researching. The general aesthetics of it, I'm trying to keep in concept with what I did at the storage building, with mixing some stone, some stucco, and it'll have that look. You know, it might not be stucco and it might not be stone, but it'll look like it. So there's some unique metal buildings out there nowadays and stuff like that they have product. We use some of the product on Boulevard 41. If you go to their patio area, you won't be able to tell, but their whole patio extension that we did there is with a product like that. It's a synthetic product. It's not stone, but it looks just like the blocks that we have on the building, but it's not block. So there's some really great products out there right now to make things really look nice without going overboard and without getting planning on too much gingerbread.
well, then with that, we'll ask if there are any other questions for Louis tonight. I don't see any hands up. Louis, that was easy. So, but again, like I said, if there's anything you feel that, you want to come back and share with us,
Okay.
We're here once a month, like I said. So,
and let me know, if you in the committee forms and everything else, and who's on the committee, you have my number. Reach out to me anytime you guys need anything.
All right. We look forward to seeing how this plays out for you, and we appreciate your time again tonight.
All right. Thank you, John.
All right. Well, then I'm going to jump ahead out of that project, and really the last item in terms of projects was an update on area project statuses. And really tonight, the only thing we're going to discuss was the Bass Lake North appeal hearing, and Supervisor Heinel did share that information with us. APAC did provide a lot of feedback on that. There's a lot to read. Sorry about that, John. Kathy did a lot of good work on that in terms of the research for the Bass Lake Hill specific plan. And we had a lot of residents asking questions as well. And, they saw the value of what was proposed and conditioned, and, they wanted to share that opinion with decision makers. So that project appeal was denied, and there should be a 100-space park and ride lot, and there should be a bike facility along Bass Lake Road between the Old Country Club Road and the Hollow Oak intersection where the existing bike facility ends. So that was the update on that. I'm hoping we can get here early tonight, and that's basically the Bass Lake North plan right there. So the last item on our agenda tonight is our officer election for 2021, and we all our officers have volunteered to continue on for another year. I'll be going into my third year. Tim's been here many years. John's been here many years. Brooke's coming into another year with us as well. So before we take this vote of voting members, I would just like to remind everyone that we are volunteers. I'm sure Tim would like to have a little more free time. I know he wants to participate in APAC, but maybe in this coming year, if anybody wants to work on a project, maybe get some tutoring, that they might want to volunteer to be a chair, vice chair, secretary next year. This is a year to work on it. So we invite everyone who is a member and those who want to become members. Your participation is valuable. We're just doing this as volunteers. So with that, Tim and I were looking at this. We were just going to go ahead and do a slate of candidates tonight because we had no other candidates that stepped up. And so with that, I need to grab my list. So I'm looking at too many screens. So I'll start with our voting members, and we'll just get an aye or a nay. And if there's a nay, I don't know what we're going to do. We'll have to figure out. But Chrissy's here tonight. Chrissy, do you have a yes or a no on this slate of officers? Did I lose you?
Sorry, I froze.
Oh, that was me. Okay.
You asked the question again.
Okay, it's just a yes or no vote on these officers for 2021.
Yes.
Okay, that's easy. Nancy's not able to be here tonight. She did communicate her vote would be yes, but unless we need to break a tie, I think we're off the hook on that. Kathy Prevost.
That's a yes.
Okay. John Raslier, would you like to vote for yourself? Well, I don't know. Maybe he's. I don't see John there. Okay. Well, we'll come back to John if we have to. John Richard, it's good to see you tonight. Are you a yes or you no? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss it?
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah. Now, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. The answer is yes, of course.
Okay. This is a clumsy way to do this. Ellison, we're glad to see you here tonight. Would you like to contribute a vote?
Yes, with gratitude for those of you who continue.
Well, that's a two-way street because you put in a lot of time here. So thank you, Ellison. Kim is not here tonight. Brooke is not available. Joel Wiley.
Aye.
Awesome. Tim White.
Yes.
And I'm the last, and I will add to the consensus. It's a yes. So this is sort of it's a requirement by our bylaws that voting members vote on the officers for each year. I think that next year that I have an electronic ballot option that we could do and have these votes submitted in a period of time prior to the meeting in December next year. We can discuss that with maybe an officer subcommittee and see how we'd like to follow that up so that we don't have to vote for ourselves in public, as it were. But to all the voting members, we continue to appreciate your efforts to participate in the process here. It is, everyone doing some heavy lifting to make it easier for each other. And to the officers that have offered to serve, again, I appreciate all your support. I'm hoping next year that maybe we can get some new blood in here. I'm willing to do anything with this. I'm also willing to let someone do the driving, and and I'll continue to support whatever's going on. I'll continue to be a voting member, obviously. So, with that, if there's nothing else on our agenda tonight or any other go backs, okay. Our next meeting, sorry, I'm going to grab this real quick so that everybody can see it. Our next meeting is January 13th on a Wednesday. It will be virtual again. I talked to Kevin at CSD, and it appears that they were working on a plan to maybe allow some use of the pavilion. I imagine that's out the window for the next several months. As soon as we're able to meet safely in public together, taking precautions, we'll make every effort to do so. But until then, we'll continue on this virtual fashion, and I appreciate everyone's indulgence in making these meetings continue to happen in this virtual environment. So, unless there's anything from anybody else, I would say that we are adjourned.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys, and everybody stay
Thank you.
safe and enjoy the holidays best you can.
Good night.
Night all.
Good night, all.
Night.